People keep claiming that websites charge different prices depending on where you browse from. Now that's a cool claim, but is that actually true? Well, I'm a developer, so instead of just guessing, I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit the same site from over 20 different countries and compare the responses. I want to see if the content changes and actually dispose of this myth or see if this is the reality. So here's the experiment that I want to run, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do it with code. I'm going to send the same request, so same URL, same headers from multiple locations. US, UK, Germany, UAE, India, Singapore, you name it. I'm going to do a bunch of different countries. I'll have over 20 in this video. And I want to see, do I get different prices? Do I get different currencies? And overall, am I treated differently based on the location I'm browsing from? Now we'll dive into the code and I'll show you exactly how I do this. But first, let's get a little bit of context here. Now, sites often will adjust their content based on your location, so they can do things like regional pricing and conversion optimization. In some cases, this is called price discrimination, where if you're from a country that has a much cheaper cost of living, you don't make as much money, think of more of a developing nation, you're gonna have a significantly lower price for the exact same service that someone from a country like the US would have to pay, full price for. Now, companies that are famous for doing this include airlines, hotels, SaaSes, for example, and really in education, that's huge as well. A lot of course platforms will do this and give you almost 80% off if you're from lower kind of tier countries. I don't want to say it like that, but you know what I mean, right? So if you only ever browse from your own home IP address, you literally do not know what other people are seeing or how you're being treated on the internet based purely on where you're from. Now, with that in mind, how do you actually fake being in multiple countries at the same time, especially if you want to do this from code? Well, there's a few signals that the browser will look at to determine where you're from. Now, the first is most obvious. This is your IP address, right? Most companies are just going to look at the IP address. And if the IP says Germany, for example, they're going to trust you're from Germany, and then they're going to start serving you the content like that. There's a lot of other small clues that some more advanced companies will look at, like your browser fingerprinting, the language that you're browsing in, previous search history, if you've been to that website before, where your credit card's from. There's a lot of other factors that can come into this. They might also look at the time zone, and then they'll also see if you're trying to automate this and use a bot, are you browsing from the same IP address over and over and over again? And if you are, you could be hit with rate limits, CAPTCHAs, IP bans, and they could just outright block you from even accessing the service. Now, I know a lot of you are thinking, okay, so you want to, simulate being in different countries, just turn on a VPN. You've probably done that before. You've been in some country, you flicked on a VPN, and you can kind of pretend that you're in a different place. Now, that will work in some cases, but it doesn't work really well when we're talking about doing this from code. If I want to have 100 different bots go out there and really quickly grab a bunch of information, I'm going to have to turn my VPN on and off and keep changing it if I'm using my own computer. So it's not really going to work for this experiment, and some of the more advanced websites actually know the VPN IP addresses and will automatically block those and not let you through. Example, go to YouTube, try to load up some F1 content on any kind of VPN, and you're going to see that it immediately bans you because it recognizes the VPN IP addresses. So that's kind of the problem, right? We can't really do this with a VPN, so what I'm going to have to use instead is something called a proxy network. Now, a proxy network allows you to have access to millions of residential IPs from real physical devices. That means that you're essentially sharing the bandwidth with another device that's located in another country, and you can just ask for any IP address that you want, get access to a new one, and you can rotate that IP address and switch it around constantly. That means that if I want to browse from Botswana or something, right, I can do that. I can just get a local IP address from Botswana, and as soon as that IP address gets banned or it gets detected by a website, if I'm doing a lot of crawling, I can just ask for a new one, rotate the IP address, and keep going from there. Alternatively, I could use the same one if I want to, and I can do this at scale with hundreds of different devices at the exact same time, so I have no network limitation, and I can go on 100 different companies all in parallel and grab all of this data. So for this video, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a proxy network. And in order for me to do that, I teamed up with Data Impulse. Now, Data Impulse has one of the best proxy networks. In this case, I'm going to use their residential proxy network, where you only have to pay $1 per gigabyte of traffic, which is the cheapest in the industry. Anyways, let's have a look at some demos here, and I'll show you how I set this up and what the result is. Do you actually get different prices from different countries? And can we see a real example of that? So I'm in my code editor here, and I just want to run you through through a few demos of why you actually might need a proxy network if you're trying to do some automation, scraping, etc. And again, we'll get into that experiment where I'll go and I'll scrape a really popular website that you all know, and we'll see if the prices change based on the country I'm scraping from. So first, what I want to do is just run a kind of de facto browser here. Now, I'm currently in the UAE. UAE is pretty well known for having a lot of restrictions on the internet. For example, I can't do something like WhatsApp calling or FaceTiming. That's just blocked in the country. And there's a bunch of other websites that are blocked as well for various different reasons. We don't need to get into it. And for example, one of those websites is Tor. Okay, so if I just like try to open this up on my computer right now because I'm in UAE, you're gonna see that it just like infinitely loads and I just can't get it to open. And the exact same thing happens if I use an automation framework like Playwright. So let me just go with this where I run this kind of no proxy example where I'm just, using my default browser here with something called Playwright and trying to open this website. If I do that, we'll just give it a second. You see it's going to load up Chromium here using this automation framework. By the way, I have a lot of tutorials on this. You can check my channel if you want to see exactly how to write this type of code. And you can see that it's just infinitely loading, right? It's not going to allow me to access this site. And even though it's showing about blank, it is trying to load this site in the background, but I simply cannot access it because of where I'm located. So that's kind of the first problem, right? If you're in a country like UAE, like I am, you're kind of just stuck. There's certain sites you can't access. Now, what you can do though, like I mentioned, is you can simply connect to a proxy network. So what I've done is I've set up the exact same code here. And the only difference here is that what I'm doing is I'm using a proxy. So I set up this little class here. Let me quickly show it to you here. It's called this async proxy browser. And inside of here, when I connect to Chromium, what I'm doing is I'm connecting through a proxy network. From the proxy network, I'm able to pass some credentials to connect to that data impulse proxy, and then I can choose what country I want to browse from. So what I've done here is I've said, okay, I want to browse from the US. And then if I run this code, so let's go back here and change this to the with proxy, you'll see that it will actually allow me to load this site. So give this a second. And you can see that first it shows me where I am. So I am in the US, and then it's able to load this Tor project site. All right, so that's one example, right? Like you can get blocked, and then if you have a proxy network, you're able to actually connect to something useful. But first, I just want to quickly show you kind of how this works, because it seems like, is it really that simple? And yes, it kind of is I have this base proxy code that I wrote where I get my proxy host, port, username, and password. And then what I'm able to do is I can just pass a configuration option here. So I can have the server, the username, and the password. And in the username, I can embed this kind of country code, and that tells Data Impulse what country I want to browse from. And it will automatically just get a proxy for me in less than 1 second inside of that country that I can browse from. Now I can also target even finer based on city, zip code, region, province, etc. In my case, I'm just doing country. So what I've done in order to do that is I just set up an account here with Data Impulse. I'll leave a link to it in the description in case you want to use it. And I just set up a residential proxy plan here. You can see the information. I'm going to have to blur it out so you can't use it. You can see my amount of traffic. And then what I'm able to do is target specific countries and filters. So like I was saying, I can go through here. I can see all the IP addresses in all of these different countries. They have over 90 million unique IP addresses. And then I can go and pick like a state. So for example, in Albania, I can browse from this specific state. I can browse from a specific city. I can do a zip code. I can do an ASIN. And then I can set up if I want to rotate the proxy and all of that. And it gives me an example URL on exactly how to do that. Very, very easy to set up and works inside of pretty much any language, any framework, and you can just directly do it from a curl command as well. So anyways, I have this all set up, right? And then when I trigger the browser, I just connect with this proxy network using my credentials. I'm able to pass this little parameter __CR and then the country code, which in that case was US, and then I can view and kind of connect from that proxy. Anyways, let's look at a few other examples. So now what I want to do is show you a few examples of where price discrimination actually exists. Now, the first example is here on AlgoExpert. Now, this is a site that I personally know uses price discrimination because I used to work for them and I'm kind of aware of some of the strategies that they've used. I've also just seen it myself when I've browsed from different locations. And you can see that right now they sell kind of this bundle for $119 of all of these different products, right? Now, this is what you're going to see in most Western countries if you browse this site. However, if you're from different countries, you might get a different price. So I want to show you kind of a code demo that I wrote here that tries to simulate exactly that. You'll see that I have a list of target countries. These are the codes. So you have India, for example, Japan, Australia, CA, France, Canada, Deutschland or Germany, Great Britain, US, okay? And I want to go to that page and I just want to scrape what the price is. And I want to figure out, okay, what price are they actually charging me based on the country? So I've got a bunch of random code in here. You don't need to kind of understand all of it. But the point is I connect to the proxy network. I go here onto the site, I look for the price, I detect what country I'm into just to verify that I am in the right country, and then I'm going to print out kind of a table and see all the different results. Okay, so I'm just going to run this code here, and you're going to see that in parallel, I start connecting to all of these different countries from all of these different browsers. The reason I'm able to do this is because I am connecting to that proxy network, so I'm not just doing it locally on my own computer. You can see all of the cities that I'm connecting from all of the different countries. I'm waiting for the page to load, and then I'm going to be able to aggregate and get all of the results. So again, if I was using a VPN, like I would have to flick it on and off and on and off and keep testing this a bunch of times. In this case, because I have the proxy, I can just scale out to as many places as I want. I don't have any IP bands, I don't have any blocks, and you can see that already we're getting a different price of $59 here. So let's wait a second and get the summary and see what country this price is coming from. Okay, and there you go. We can see the prices that we get from all of these countries. And then interestingly, from India here, we get a $59 price. So it's approximately 50% off if you're just browsing and purchasing from India, right? Now, I don't know if they do anything with their credit cards at checkout, but generally speaking, you get a different price if you're from a different country, even on a site like this that isn't, the most sophisticated thing in the world and that is selling education. So that's one example that I wanted to show you. And what I want to do now is scale this up a little bit, go to a site that has a lot more content and a lot more courses, and show you how much more drastic this can really be and why you should consider this. So the next site that I want to run this demo on here is Udemy. Udemy is famous for having all kinds of really cheap courses. They have tons of courses, and you can see from here, I'm browsing in UAE, and we have a course for $19, for $64. We have a bunch of other courses, right? And there's a ton of content on this page, but generally speaking, this is all like kind of expensive. I don't see anything that's like $10, $20, $30. It's serving me a lot of, pretty high-end courses and content here. So what I'm going to do is scrape this entire page, find all the courses and the prices, and I'm going to do this from about 20 different countries. We're going to go in Africa, we're going to go in Europe, we're going to go in Asia, we're going to go in North America, South America, and we're going to see what content gets served to us and what the price is. So let's do that. I have some code here. You can see that I've set up a bunch of stuff. I have some target countries here, right? So we're going to look through all of these like Indonesia, Pakistan, etc. We have some other code for kind of actually scraping the page. And then I just have a bunch of kind of logging so we can get these nice tables and we can see all of the different courses and their different prices organized by country. Okay, so let's go ahead and run. You can see it's scraping 20 countries. Again, we're doing this in parallel. You can see all the different countries popping up that we're scraping from. Again, I just have this random, but if you wanted to with Data Impulse, you could select the exact targets and like go really granular in terms of where you want the proxies to actually come from. I don't even know some of these cities, but we have like Rome, for example, Lahore, Pakistan. We have Durban, South Africa, I think. We have Medan, Indonesia, Japan, Lagos, Nigeria. So some of the top ones is where you're typically going to get the prices from. And you can see here, I don't know what currency that was, but it's kind of going through and giving me all these different courses that it's finding from all these different countries. So there you go, Philippines. We've got, Philippine pesos here for these different courses. From what I can recall, this is pretty cheap for the price in pesos compared to US dollars. Here we go. We have rupees popping up here from India. Okay, keep going. Australia, right? We have the Australian dollar prices popping up, and we got a bunch of stuff. And what I had this do is I had it organize all of the different courses and then give me a list of prices for that one course. Because we did this in 20 different countries, a lot of the same courses are going to appear. So I want to kind of compare those courses and see, all right, for the same course, does it cost a different amount based on what country you're from? So let's just have a look at one example here. This course is the SQL database design course, A to Z, and you can see that these prices are wildly different even if you do the conversion into USD. So let's just pick a random example here, like maybe this one, okay? And because I want to do the conversion, we're going to go over to good old AI, if I can pop this open, and I'm just going to ask it like I did previously, convert these all to USD and give me the same table back. Okay, so we're going to give that to good old AI. Hopefully it can do the conversion for us so we can see what the US dollar equivalent is, so we get a real sense of like how much is price discrimination actually happening. Okay, and there we go. Now I'm going to assume that some of these are not 100% accurate because I think some of the currencies were not showing correctly, based on the country we went from. For example, I think in Pakistan, this is dollars, not the Pakistani currency, which I'm not even familiar with, but you get the idea, right? So you can see in Australia, right, it's about 28 US dollars. Then in Canada, it was only 22 Canadian dollars, which is going to be less than that in US dollars. Then we go to Germany. Okay, it's about 17.39. Okay, so it's the same for the European countries where we're using the same currency like the euro. Okay, in Great Britain, it's about 20 US dollars. In Indonesia, it's only $8 or $9, which is significantly cheaper. In India, we're even cheaper at $6, right? In Italy, it's $68. So I don't know why Italy, for some reason, is more expensive than those, but I guess it is. In Mexico, it's $12. In Nigeria, it's $7. And this is the case story for all of the courses that you saw on here, right? Like they all have different prices. So when I saw this, I knew there was some price discrimination going on, but I didn't know it was this extreme. Udemy is doing really dynamic pricing based on where you're from. And if you purely were just browsing from another country, you're going to get a significantly cheaper price, which I don't think a lot of people really understand. So that's kind of the core experiment. I think it proves the point. Yes, you absolutely are getting treated differently based on where you're browsing from and pretty much being discriminated against, based on simply the geolocation of your browser. And that's the same thing if you're using bots, if you're using AI browsing. So you really should be aware of that. And if you want to run this type of experiment on your own, or you want to simulate being in a different country and you want to do this at scale from code, then consider checking out Data Impulse, who kindly sponsored this video. And again, has very cheap, high quality proxies that you can use from pretty much every single country. As you saw, it's very easy to set this up. It's a few lines of code to change when you're running these automation scripts. They have over 90 million IP addresses. You're able to use this globally. They have all of the proxy rotation, and their support is very good as well. You can see I was actually chatting with support the other day. They got back to me really quickly, helped me debug my code, fixed everything in literally just about 5-10 minutes. They also have very high uptime, and it's very fast to launch the proxy, which is sometimes an issue where it takes a second to spin up. In this case, it's less than 1 second to actually access the proxy and then go from there. So that's that, guys. That's what I wanted to show you. I think it's an interesting experiment, and it was kind of, crazy for me when I actually ran through this to see how much of a difference there actually was. Obviously, I only did 2 sites here. There's a lot of other sites that I could have played around with, but I think this proves the point. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.